The joy in Bethlehem was fragile, a flickering candle in a world of deep shadows. While Mary and Joseph held the infant Jesus, a storm of royal fury was gathering in Jerusalem. In the dead of night, as the small family slept, a dream came again. But this wasn't a dream of celebration. It was a stark, urgent warning. An angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph, his voice cutting through the silence of sleep. "Get up, take the child and his mother, and flee to Egypt, and remain there until I tell you. For Herod is about to search for the child, to destroy him." There was no hesitation, no questioning. The command was clear, and the threat was real. Joseph awoke with the angel's words still echoing in his mind. He shook Mary gently, his face etched with a gravity that needed no explanation. In the dim light of their small room, they moved with a quiet, practiced urgency. Every rustle of cloth, every soft footstep was a prayer against discovery. They gathered what little they had, a few provisions, a water skin, and the precious gifts of the Magi that would now fund their survival. And they took the child, sleeping peacefully, unaware of the danger that stalked his young life. Under the cold gaze of the stars, they slipped out of Bethlehem. The town that had just witnessed the birth of a king now watched his secret flight. The journey ahead was not a simple trip. It was a desperate escape into the unknown. They were fugitives, a young carpenter, his teenage wife, and a baby, heading into a foreign land. The road to Egypt was a well-worn trade route, but for them, it was a path of peril. They had to travel by night, hiding during the day, avoiding Roman patrols and the prying eyes of Herod's spies who could be anywhere. Imagine the fear that must have gripped them. Every sound in the darkness, every shadow that moved, could be a threat. They traveled through barren landscapes, the vast, unforgiving Sinai desert stretching before them. The sun was a merciless enemy by day, and the cold was a biting foe by night. Joseph, a man of quiet strength, led the way. His faith was his compass, his love for Mary and Jesus his shield. He was their protector, a simple man entrusted with an impossible task, safeguarding God's own Son. He had to find shelter, find water, and navigate a hostile world, all while carrying the weight of heaven's promise. Mary, cradling Jesus, was the heart of their small, wandering family. Her strength was in her endurance, her silent prayers a constant source of comfort. Meanwhile, back in Jerusalem, King Herod's patience had worn thin. Days turned into weeks, and the wise men did not return. The king, a man consumed by paranoia and a lust for power, realized he had been deceived. His calculated courtesy turned to pure, cold rage. He, the great king of the Jews, had been tricked by foreign stargazers. His fury was not just wounded pride. It was the terror of a tyrant who sees his throne threatened. He had sought to control the prophecy, to manipulate it for his own ends. Now he would seek to destroy it entirely. He summoned his commanders, his face a mask of brutal determination. If he could not find the one child, he would eliminate them all. His decree was monstrous, an act of unimaginable cruelty. He ordered his soldiers to go to Bethlehem and all the surrounding villages, and to kill every male child 2 years old and under, using the timeline the Magi had given him as his guide. His rage would not be surgical. It would be a bloody, sweeping massacre, a scorched earth policy to extinguish the light he so feared. While Joseph, Mary, and Jesus journeyed south, the soldiers marched on Bethlehem. The town of peace became a place of screams. A terrible cry of anguish rose from the homes of Bethlehem, the sound of mothers weeping for their children, refusing to be comforted because their children were no more. The prophet Jeremiah had foretold this sorrow centuries earlier. A voice was heard in Ramah, wailing in loud lamentation, Rachel weeping for her children. The joy of the Nativity was brutally extinguished by the darkness of human evil. It was a stark reminder that the arrival of the Savior did not immediately end suffering. In fact, it provoked the very worst of humanity to lash out in defiance. But even in this horrific tragedy, God's plan was not defeated. As the cries of Bethlehem faded into the desert winds, a tiny family was crossing the border into Egypt. They were refugees, exiles, seeking safety in the land that had once enslaved their ancestors. And in this act of survival, another prophecy was fulfilled. Out of Egypt I have called my son. Herod, in his violent attempt to secure his earthly kingdom, had unknowingly played a part in the divine story. His evil act, born of fear, could not stop the unstoppable. God's promise was not in a palace, surrounded by soldiers, but in the arms of a young mother, carried on a donkey through the desert. The flight to Egypt was not a retreat. It was a strategic repositioning. It was a demonstration that God's power doesn't always look like a king on a throne. Sometimes it looks like a family on the run. Sometimes it looks like quiet obedience in the face of terror. The world's most powerful man had tried to kill a baby, and he had failed, because this child was protected not by armies, but by the very hand of God. The light had been hidden, but it had not been put out. It was being preserved, kept safe, until the time was right for it to shine on the world once more. Thank you for joining us for this chapter of the Christmas story. If this story has touched you, please consider subscribing for more episodes as we continue to explore the life of Jesus.